episode of Either Side of Nhill. Ben and I had an awesome opportunity to speak with Mayor Melanie Albrecht, an exclusive interview. She was chatting about a whole range of topics about the Nhill community, and we wanted to share this as an exclusive podcast with you. So take a listen here and enjoy. Welcome and hello, Mayor Albrecht. Thank you for joining us today on Either Side of Nhill. It's great to see you.
Hi guys, thank you so much for inviting me, and please call me Melanie.
All right.
There is a new title and I really am getting used to it, but yes, I'd love you to call me Melanie as we chat today.
Okay, thank you so much, because we weren't quite sure on what the protocol was there, so thank you very much. So Mel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a Nhill, describe myself as a Nhill girl. I was born in the Nhill hospital back in the day and did all my education at Nhill College. I went off and joined the South Australians and went to Adelaide to university for 5 years, but then fell in love and moved back and have called Nhill, or I technically live in the Nhill postcode, but in a place called Jurang now, just out of Nhill since then. So yeah, this is the place that I love to live and certainly call home.
So you were in Adelaide for a little while. That's good to hear. You're on this side of Nhill.
Yes, I was, yes. That interesting university choice about which way will you pick. But yeah, Adelaide's got a great vibe, as I'm sure you both know, and it was certainly a wonderful time to do university there and study. And it was good to have that. It's always nice to have that perspective, I think, when you're a teenager growing up in Nhill. You think, oh, I'm going to leave as soon as I can and all these exciting things might happen. But it gives you the time to also really reflect on your values and what sort of a life you want for your career, but also, you know, for your family. So for me, it was a really, great decision to come back. And I'm so happy that this is where we're raising our family.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're obviously fairly familiar with the area, having lived there for most of your life. How did you get into the role that you're in? Did you always have aspirations to get into local government or into that sort of community-facing role? And what's it like being mayor? We imagine, you know, the power of being
Yes.
Not sure about that. It's a good question, Ben, because I have always had an interest, and I'm not really sure where it came from. My dad, when I was a young child, was on council, so I don't know whether somewhere the seed was planted, but certainly in high school, I was really interested in politics and loved, you know, some experiences going to Canberra and meeting politicians. And then in university, I did a double degree, and one of the degrees I majored in politics. So yeah, there was obviously that inkling of interest there. And then when you come back to a community like Nhill, it's really a good opportunity, I think, to reflect on how you can contribute to your community. And there's so many amazing people doing, you know, volunteering in all aspects that make a rural community really strong.
Yeah.
But I thought that the professional skills that I have from my working role, you know, could sit really nicely with local government. And I just thought, that would be really interesting to have a different viewpoint. We'd sort of gotten to a council where a lot of people were over the age of 50. And I was sort of someone who was probably in a different generational bracket. I've got 4 small children. So, you know, 4 children, 10 and under when I ran for council. So, you know, even sort of bringing the lens about how I experience the community, I just thought that would be a good voice to have sitting at the table. And ideally, our council will become more diverse as we bring in different cultures. We've got a really good gender balance at the moment, which is amazing, with 3 men and 3 women. But that's where I guess we need to have representation from all generations sitting on council to have that voice to say, this is what we need to make the community an amazing place to live. So yeah, that's where it started. And then I think I did the first term, and then when we were discussing about who would be mayor this year, I effectively said to my colleagues, you know, if it's something that you would like, someone new and different, some of the councillors have really very experienced and they've been mayor before, but I'm happy to take on that role, because one of the ideals that we have as a council as the councillors, is to really make sure we're improving communication with the community. The council staff do a brilliant job in everything they do, and it's a really great role for us as councillors to have, to make sure that we can engage with the community to explain what's happening and to make sure that everyone's really consulted when we're making decisions. So yes, anyway, the long story short is obviously I was fortunate enough to be voted in as mayor, and it's been an amazing ride of so many firsts. And thank you for this as being my first podcast. It's just all these wonderful opportunities that I've had. So it's been incredible.
No, we're super thrilled
excellent
to have you here. What a great background. Thank you so much. And 4 children under 10 and then going into a role like that. Whew.
I'm not sure whether there was some COVID madness in there. It's pretty quiet in COVID. There's not a lot of school activities. Whether I thought, we can do something else. But anyway,
it's just layer on another thing.
I always tell people I have a full schedule and I like a full life, and that works well for me.
Oh, it's so good.
You've got that. Absolutely.
We've been doing lots of research whilst we've been recording our podcast over the last 6 months or so, and we've learnt so much about the Hindmarsh area. But can we ask you, there's so much to love about this area, and in particular Nhill. Can you tell us why you love Nhill?
Nill's just this town that has this community vibe, and a lot of rural country towns have it, but something about walking down the street and knowing people, walking to the supermarket and everyone says hello, the way that people come together. I've seen many occasions over my life of tragedy strike in a small country town, and the way the community bands and holds together families in those times. The way that, volunteers make everything happen, whether it's volunteers, certainly for me, it's volunteers and the amazing parents who are umpiring or coaching kids' sport. But it's the volunteers that, the Lions Club that are doing the barbecues at places, or the Rotary Club that are building things like this. It's incredible. And to me, as much as I loved the city experience, and it's different for different ways, that community feel, it's so strong in Nhill. And I appreciate, sometimes for new people coming in, it feels like a long time to work out who everyone is. And, there's always that joke, there's a lot of us that are related to one another, because we have really proudly called Nhill home. But it is a place, as you both know, either side of Nhill, it's a drive that is really manageable to get to Melbourne and Adelaide. We can go off and go and see those big city things, or I say, you can happily live here, but go to the airport and fly to another country as well. So I think that we've got that balance of rurality, but obviously if you looked on the map of Australia, we are not rural compared to remote Queensland or Northern Territory. So we have that really small country feel, but yet actually we're very lucky with the services we have accessible, whether that's healthcare, education. So the way that you feel in Nhill, the way that, children you see when you go to walk, just when you go to work, walking to school, riding their bikes, on their scooters, things like that, they are not common anymore. It's not common to be feeling the safety that we can feel still in a town like Nhill. And it's a great place to grow up, and it's a great place to raise a family.
Yeah, that's an excellent point about the location of it, because having driven from Adelaide to Melbourne so many times over the years and back, for that trip, it's the middle. And so you think this is so far, but it's actually really not that far from either of the cities. So that's a really interesting perspective from someone who actually lives in the area. So we want to talk to you about rural change. We've seen other country towns such as Bendigo and Ballarat with these population explosions. People are kind of moving from the big cities during the pandemic. What about the rural change? Have you seen that in your area? Have you seen new people coming in?
Yeah, it's certainly, obviously there's getting a lot of promotion about where people are moving geographically in Victoria, and there is a bit of a perception that there's kind of like a 90-minute circle around Melbourne, so people are moving regionally, but it's really not too far. We were so excited that Hindmarsh Council was on the Regional Movers Index last year. So in June last year, we actually were one of the cities in Australia, or the towns in Australia, that was listed that had more than 100 people come to our Shire. So that's amazing for a Shire like us. So we will keep tracking that. We know that historically there has been a decline in population, and the program around getting the Karen migrant group to move to Nhill has been extremely successful. And they're so young and having lots of children, which is wonderful. So we are really optimistic that we might be able to get a stable population over time. It may be that we don't see significant growth, but for us, really, it's just stopping the decline is the target. So we'll be keen to see what the census data says. Our housing isn't always an issue, but we've been really excited. There's a developer, or there's a couple of developers actually, but one that has bought a significant amount of property in Nhill. and has put through council lots of planning permits for smaller professional kind of retiree townhouse models. So if that developer builds all these wonderful houses, it also means that people who are looking in that rural tree change have somewhere to try it, because sometimes people do want to come and rent for a while before they fully commit to a community. But yeah, it's been really positive, and I guess it's for us as a council to make sure we sell Nhill, so making sure that people appreciate the benefits of living somewhere and everything that Nhill has to offer.
That kind of perfectly segues into the next question that I had on this, Melanie, and what impact do you expect this would have on the district? But you've touched on new housing, but also that taps into new jobs as well, infrastructure and greater community involvement from the new people that are moving to the area.
Absolutely. You know, new people bring new ideas, and that's always amazing. And the skills that they have, retention and recruitment and retention is always challenging in small rural areas. So there's certainly lots of jobs that are available in small businesses, in, you know, council, in the health service. And we can see that obviously right across Australia with the way the borders were closed, and that it means that, you know, we need more people to come. But we also, yes, are definitely looking people from urban areas like Melbourne and Adelaide to consider coming to a place like Nhill, because it just boosts the economy. You know, every time you're adding people, families, you know, a family means children to the school, and that strengthens the teachers' numbers, which strengthens the subjects available, which, you know, strengthens the job. So it's just a flow-on effect. So for us, you know, having more than 100 people come is really something to celebrate, you know, in a town like ours with our population numbers. So
yeah, absolutely,
it's huge. And yes, anyone listening, we encourage you to come and visit Nhill. You know, there's plenty of people that will give you amazing tours and testimonials about why they've chosen to come to the area and love to make it home.
But also that's with the Karen community, with the diversity and the food and the culture and the difference, which is also very interesting for a community.
Absolutely, yes. It's actually been a well studied now and publicised model, because to find a group of people who feel really comfortable in a country environment. So that was a big part of, I believe, why they enjoyed coming. We had the workforce opportunities primarily through Loverduck, but that's spread out to many, many workplaces now. And to be able to have enough people, you know, we usually say, and the census data might update it, but we usually say it was about 10% of our population in Nhill is Karen now. So to have a community that's big, I think it's 250 people, someone told me recently, of Karen descent, that is huge. And it's changed the way that our education system, you know, for the first time we're having children that come to school that don't speak any English when they start. That's very something unique and different for a town like Nhill. So, and it's incredible for the diversity that it brings. The Steampunk Festival was on at Dimboola last weekend. Yeah, incredible. But the Karen food line was absolutely the longest, because the smell from that is just incredible. They make the best, yummiest food. So where any opportunity when the Karens are cooking, everyone else is lining up, because we really, really appreciate their food. And the community garden, if anyone's ever travelling through and wants to go to the Nhill Community Garden and see the incredible it's just it's kind of like a green forest, because some of their plants are so tall and the different kinds of vegetables they grow. It's amazing.
Oh, wow. That's always nice to get different perspectives, isn't it? Absolutely. You were talking about it in terms of just the council itself, but the whole community, the more perspectives you can get, the better. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think down the track we will be speaking, I think, to Councillor Bywaters on this community. And my apologies to all those people listening. I didn't know how to pronounce it. So I'm glad you've shared that with us, because I had it as Karen, but it's Karen. Is that right?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Got it. Fantastic. So, Melanie, we recently had Anzac Day, as you know. How is Anzac Day commemorated and remembered in Nhill and the Hindmarsh area?
Anzac Day it's commemorated even in the lead up. There's an amazing group of people in Nhill for many years now have been crocheting poppies. So I'm not sure whether either of you have driven through at Anzac time, but we have these incredible artworks of poppies that are on the big palm trees in the main park, or Goldsworthy Park of Nhill. Hours and hours and hours have been spent perfecting these. There's a stunning dress in one of the shop windows formed of poppies. So it is something that the community is really thinking about prior to the event, because of the commitment of that group to really showcase and remember Anzac Day and all those who've fallen. On the actual day, we have a dawn service. Starts with the dawn service, which is beautiful, and a big attendance for that. The local Rotary Club do an egg and bacon breakfast, and so they were telling me the other day it was their 20-year anniversary of the egg and bacon breakfast, so that's good. So it brings a lot of people out. Then mid-morning we have a march, and the march is really inclusive, so it's not just those that have served. We have school children, the Karen community, other groups represented. So again, that's a really beautiful way for the community to come together and remember those. And then we move into a ceremonial service, which I was privileged to be asked to MC this year, and the Nhill RSL run that. And it's, again, just having the opportunity to reflect on what people have given and what the community did. There's many, many family names on the memorial in Nhill, long-standing family names of those that lost, the fought, and obviously the stories that those that stayed and worked that weren't able to go to war, whether that was the women or those people that were disabled, and how that kept the farming sector at the time alive.
Yeah, wow.
That's it was a crisp morning, Anzac morning, but it was a glorious, beautiful day here in Melbourne. I imagine it would have been the same in Nhill. So it's good to see some of the photos online, and also of the parade. So that's amazing, awesome. And you, how did you enjoy giving the address this year? Because that was your first time.
Yes, well, I didn't give the full address insofar as the president of the Nhill RSL did the longer address, but yeah, it was a privilege to be able to stand up there and MC the event. It's hard to imagine, really, as the generation that I'm from. We're seeing obviously these horrific social media, photos, videos of things that happen in other countries, and it's still, whilst you connect with that, and certainly, the tears come with watching and hearing some of those stories, to imagine that it was right here on our, the people, the families, the brothers, the sons that were going. I think that's what just really connects for me. But hearing that address from someone who has served in the Defence Force, yeah, it's really moving.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Moving on now to our next topic. So we've got a bunch of topics to talk to you about today, because it's our Spotlight on Nhill episode. Tell us about Ida Hobbit. This looks really interesting and so progressive. So can you tell us about the upcoming event that's happening? I think it's online. Is that right? With Nevo?
Yes. Yep. Nevo, yes. So last year we really proudly, for the first time, flew the rainbow flag on Ida Hobbit Day as a council, and we decided to do that very publicly. So we put it through as a council motion, because we wanted the community, the rainbow community, to know that we're really supportive and a very inclusive organisation as council. So yeah, this year, in addition to that, we'll still be flying the flag. The council staff have organised Nevo to do a presentation, which, as you said, you can watch online. There will also be a physical gathering of people in the Djimbulla Library that can then watch it on a big screen. So yeah, I'm really interested to learn more. I don't know a lot about Nevo. I've certainly, since that's been set up, I'm keen to go back and find the productions that he's done. I've seen that he's done some documentaries, I believe. So I'm there to learn more with the rest of the community, and we really hope those that we know that we'll get those that are allies there listening and learning, but we also hope others that are open and wanting to learn more and not very, they might not really understand what LGBTQIA plus, they might not understand all the acronyms. They might not understand how they can be a good support and ally in the community. So the online talk is to be able to educate people what that means, and trying to understand the challenges that people still face in the community, identifying with their sexuality or with their gender. So it should be a really interesting topic.
Absolutely. And for those listeners of ours that are not sure, speaking of acronyms, Ida Hobbit actually means International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Intersexism and Transphobia. So there's a lot of information online about it. And it's actually May the 17th. So it's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So that's fantastic. It's always good, again, to get more perspectives and get educated about different perspectives and what people's lived experiences are. It just enriches the community, absolutely. So that's really, really positive. So we want to move on to a topic that we know you're very passionate about, and that's the Hindmarsh Shire Youth Council. We'd love to hear more about this, how you're involved, and what's the main aim of the Youth Council? How do people get involved, and are you an active part of this, or you're supporting it? Can you tell us a bit more about it?
So the Youth Council is is obviously trying to get ideas from people that sit in the youth category. And the youth category we actually say is up to 25. So sometimes we find that they're high school related students, but it actually is open to people up to the age of 25 to nominate. Youth provide a different lens on the issues that are going on. They understand what it's like for themselves to be part of the community and the challenges it can have being a teenager in this current age, which, you know, can be related to those living in Melbourne and Adelaide with the, you know, body image stuff, the social media content, the online trolling that can happen. So there's those issues, as well as being able to discuss what they want to see literally from council in the community. So, you know, how do they want to see their skate parks, and how do they want to see events that might be run on school holidays, or what does that look like? So we call for nominations for youth council. We try and get a representation from all 4 towns. Obviously, we look for cultural representation, gender diversity, and the council experience is to provide them an opportunity to train to be leaders of the community, you know, and leaders in their life, whether they put that in business or in a different community down the track. But there's some really great workshops, camps, you know, guest speakers that the council staff bring in for youth council. They're just fun stuff. You know, they went off and did a hike in the Grampians about a month or so ago. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities to do things. They're meeting people from other towns, and they are really just talking about those core issues and informing us as councillors, as well as the council staff, you know, what do the young people of this community, of this council being Hindmarsh Shire, need to be able to say this is a wonderful place to live, and what role we have in that as council. So it's something that we really try and promote. They're very active on social media, and so it's really great the way that information's being shared. It's making sure that Hindmarsh Council are doing things in a way that is actually what the youth want to see, because sometimes, you know, as adults, we can think a particular design or an idea is really cool, and then it's like, it's not. It's not what we're into. It's not what we want. So the idea is you're hearing it straight from the youth themselves, you know, their voices are what we want to amplify. So as a counsellor, we actually don't go and sit on their meetings, because we don't want them to feel that they can't speak freely. Not that I hope they would feel that, but there's just no pressure about anyone else being in the room. It means that there's an opportunity for them to really work through their ideas, and then they can pass those up where they need particular support. They want shade over some of the skate parks. So that's something we've recently put through one of the grant applications to spend money on, because there was advocating in the past that got the skate parks, but they're like, it can be hot sitting and watching your friends. So we want that. So it's just the ideas that can come through, and then how we can progress them, whether it's council staff because they're operational ideas that can happen, or they're actually the councillors because they're big ticket items. So yeah, I encourage anyone next year when nominations come up to apply for youth council. And obviously youth council is just a great thing to get involved in to make a difference in your community.
Yeah, and absolutely. So empowering for those you know, those young kids as well, to say, hey, actually somebody's listening to my voice, and, you know, they're investing in the future of me, you know, by being involved. So how empowering. It's really cool. Love it.
Absolutely. It's certainly, you know, it's a different generation, isn't it? I think Greta Thunberg has just showed that one person's voice can make such a palpable difference right across the world. And so we really need to educate our young people that your voices do matter, and you will be heard. And this is a great platform for that to happen.
It's interesting how it can ruffle the feathers of some of the older generation when the young ones start speaking up, isn't it? But it's just so important. It's really, really good.
And impressive at the same time too, because it's like, hang on a minute, you're so smart.
Yeah.
As well. I see it with
what was I doing when I was 16?
No,
oh my gosh.
You know, I think sometimes as we get older, we overcomplicate things. And, you know, there's, you know, having little children really all the time, the way they can see with their lens that they're not, you know, they don't overthink it. They just can feel that core truth about what is, you know, they sit with their value set a lot stronger. And I think, sometimes as we get older, we try and think about too much. So I think, the youth voice is so important.
And you mentioned the school holiday program with some of the amazing things that they were able to do. I actually wanted to sign up for the photography tour.
It looked great, didn't it?
It looked fantastic. But this could be something down the track that we might investigate a little bit further, particularly when the nominations are coming up for council next year. It sounds really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That's awesome. You touched on it a little bit earlier, Melanie, about the strength of the rural community. How would you describe the strength of the rural community? What are they? So you express mateship and helping each other, and I imagine it's really unique, living in a country town, which I haven't. So are you able to describe what the strength of the rural community is?
It's interesting when you're living in a town where the predominant sector is agriculture. So obviously the uncontrollable seasons that farmers can do their best to obviously crop at the right time or harvest at the right time, but they don't know what Mother Nature's going to do in the way of weather. It's an interesting dynamic because then it flows on. So obviously being an agricultural sector, if the financial pressure, if it's a drought year, that flows on to our retail business, that flows on to the pressures that families would experience, and that might flow on, through healthcare systems. So the connection and sort of, I guess, the way that we're interwoven together as a community through agriculture is a really interesting dynamic that obviously isn't a thing in the city. And we're really mindful, it's kind of that sort of laugh thing about after it rains, the first thing everyone says, how much rain did you get? Because it's really a core function of the economic society in which we operate. So, whereas in the city, you might just be like, oh, that was inconvenient that it rained. But here, obviously, rain at the right time. Do you know what I mean? It's rain at the time where it makes, you can see that the dollars will grow and those businesses will be successful. There's times when you do not want it to rain, and when you're ready to harvest or your hazel cut on the ground and then it's getting wet. So as a community, I think that's one of whether you work in the agricultural sector or not, but it's the way that connects us all, and the way that being on council, you need to be really mindful about those impacting factors that do flow right across the community, and how we hold together in those times of hardship. So it's wonderful in times of great harvest. We've seen property prices go extremely high. So that's been really beneficial for some farming businesses, probably challenging for others for the same reason. But yeah, it's the way we do all come together, and the way that sporting clubs are obviously massive. And I know you've had Kat Colburn on and talking about that, the way that a sporting club, for farmers, males who work independently on their farm or don't see very many people, being able to come together as a community on the weekend, whether that's football, netball, hockey, this time of year. It can be obviously other sports in summer. But that's huge to be able to say, how's your week been? How are you going? How can I debrief or support and help you? So I think the way that sport interacts with the community, and then there's also a big religious group in a town like Nhill. So Sunday is very much traditionally been a day of rest, and a lot of people still have regular church commitments and family commitments. So yeah, it's just the way we connect as a community is something really special. And I think it's really nice to, be asked a question like that, to reflect on what that is, because living in the city, I know that it's not the same as how we have those traditional structures around the agricultural sector.
And I guess when it's just life day in, day out, you probably don't take those moments to think about it, much like I wouldn't in my own neighborhood, but when you're asked, you think, okay, what is it why do I like being here? But that's all really, really nice stuff. Now, we have to ask about something that's very close to our heart, which is, of course, the overland train. We've done the overland over the years. I used to get very excited as a kid. We used to do the sleeper option, and back in the day when it was actually available. And we have subscribed to the Hindmarsh Shire Council News, and we get the e-news events. There's always so much happening in the Shire, but recently we read that the overland train was celebrating 135 years. We have those great memories of going to Melbourne and Adelaide. What about yourself? What's your memories and your experience with the overland train?
I think my first memory would be a school trip to Melbourne on the train. I don't know what year I would have been. I guess probably about grade 4 or something, but going to the zoo, and it was and just all the kids on the train going to the zoo. I don't recall whether we stayed overnight or whether it was a day trip or not, but yeah, it was just something about the freedom of moving around on a train was very Very exciting. I must confess I haven't used it in recent years, but my children, my eldest 2 daughters, have been using it quite a lot with grandparents and going to Melbourne, and they love it because, again, they can just sit there and play their card games and walk around and do things. So it's a great way to transport them, and it's a really highly valuable service for those particularly wanting access for medical appointments. So, yeah, the celebration was fantastic. It was really fun. There's a group of very passionate Overland supporters in Nhill. A shout out to Helen Herrick Woodhouse, who had organised balloons, and it was wonderful. When the train conductors got off, we all went into a chorus of happy birthday. It was singing.
Love it.
And it was the best vibe. So, yes, Helen had made that all happen. So congratulations, Helen, if she's listening. And she's very passionate, and she's certainly, we're working to support her to try and work out, is there some political advocacy we can do, or to be able to see whether there's options to make sure that overland service continues, but also supports those in the way that need healthcare access. Because if you're over 65, sometimes it's a good option. Not everyone feels comfortable driving in the city, and that if they can do that, go down for their specialist appointment and come back. It also gives them the ability, obviously, to move around the train, but it's just you dropped in the centre of Melbourne, really easy to get a taxi wherever you need to go. So it's a huge service. And like you said, the going back from Adelaide to Melbourne on the overland is definitely, an experience.
One of my earliest memories of the overland train was with my older brother and one of my best mates. We were allowed to travel to Adelaide by ourselves on the overland. I reckon I might have been about 16 or 17, and we were so excited. It might have been younger, actually. And I remember as the train was pulling out of then Spencer Street, through to North Melbourne, and we'd wave, see you later to Mum, and, see you, Mum. And about, 2 seconds later, out come the Winnie Blues, and we lit up a cigarette.
You were able to smoke on the train then?
Yes.
Yes. On the train. You were smoking on the train, my goodness.
Yeah. And we turned the chairs around and we played cards all night, and I think, annoyed everybody. Apologies. That was back in the 80s.
And interesting, obviously the conductors did not care that you were underage. They were just
whatever. Who are the cheap seats, Melanie?
Just lock the doors.
Oh, my goodness. Interesting memories.
That was super fun. We've got a couple of final questions here for you, Melanie. It's been such an excellent chat today. So one of our most important ones here is, what are you currently watching on Netflix?
Or any streaming platform.
I'm not actually into Netflix that much at the moment, but I have enjoyed this year. I love a show called Billions on Stan.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so it's just come to a season end, so it's like, oh no, another 12 months to wait till it comes back. And I do get very excited at the moment every week when a show called A Million Little Things comes up. In my little Apple TV, gives me a little alert. There's a new episode out. So yes, I've been enjoying that.
Oh, fantastic. I watched a series called Hacks on Stan, which has got Jean Smart, who was from Designing Women way back in the 80s. And she plays an older comedian, like a Vegas kind of comedian, who's on the downward slide. And there's a new season of that coming out in a couple of weeks. So I'm very excited as well. So fantastic. Sorry, it wasn't about me.
No. Stop talking about yourself, man.
I'm always up for recommendations. I think over COVID, the streaming services went a bit crazy, I think, for everyone, didn't they? And we've got too many subscriptions. So there's a big, vast array of options out there.
I watched one last year. Sorry, Ben, interrupted. Last year I watched one during COVID, and it had 160 episodes.
Oh, what?
Yeah. And then I watched it with a girlfriend of mine who was in another place, and so we watched it together. It was a Turkish one too, so I don't know, it was just went nuts last year. But
you got through them all? You literally binged 165.
It took ages. It was really good. I just finished watching Bridgerton and absolutely loved that. So that's on Netflix.
We might have to get you back, Melanie, just to do a TV episode.
Oh, yeah, could we?
Now, we're just about to wrap up, but we do have a standard question we ask all of our guests, and that is, what is your standard fish and chip order?
It's interesting. Living on a farm, we don't do fish and chips regularly because by the time you get it home from town, it doesn't taste so good. But anytime we go to the beach, and we actually have a bit of a tradition the Dimboola River's about like as beachy as you can get in Hindmarsh. So certainly I'm a butterfish girl and chips with a lot of chicken sauce. So you can take that and sit by the Dimboola River. You can imagine you're near the beach. And actually in saying that, I went to the Nhill Lake recently and there were seagulls there. So we were like, that was very shocking. So maybe I'll have to... If I regularly ate my fish and chips there, the seagulls might come and join us for the chips.
Yeah.
Oh wow, this has been such an amazing chat. We're out of time, and we thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else that you wanted to plug for the community? Anything else you're thinking? I really wish they asked me about that, so I could just give it one last plug before we say goodbye today.
Yeah, go rogue, Melanie.
Just stop. If you're driving through from Melbourne, Adelaide, just stop in the main street, go and check out some of the awesome cafes. There's an incredible gallery there with amazing artists with all different kinds of artwork in there. So yeah, just stop, take the time, pop out to the Aviation Heritage Centre if you can, because I think it's just, Nhill is a place where people use the toilets. They might get a snack, but we would say there's so much more to do. So give yourself a few hours or give yourself the opportunity to sleep overnight, do something in the afternoon, something in the morning before you do that Melbourne to Adelaide commute, because you will enjoy your time in Nhill.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thanks so much for your time today, Melanie. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. It's so lovely to meet you both.